Look, a lot of archaeology in the 19th century was horrendous by our standards. It was extremely colonialist, it was extremely racist, it even, it basically forced indigenous people to work and dig so that Western countries could then plunder that material and take it back to their museums. It also plentiful examples of actual grave robbing of indigenous cemeteries. And so a lot of archaeology at that time was very horrendously colonialist and racist. And so arguing that the collection practices of the British Museum were racist and colonialist, which is indisputably true, does not make the current director of the British Museum a racist. And so the same thing is true for some of the ideas that Graham is citing. He is, for example, citing this trope of white saviors, where there were these gods that had white skin and beards and were described as bringing civilization to the Aztecs or the Maya or the Inca or whatever, when in fact all of our evidence for these white savior tropes, they come from Spanish colonial sources. And so this is a real problem. There's a problem with using that evidence. And if you look at the evidence we have from pre-colonial sources, which, yes, we do, not every single Maya and Aztec codex was destroyed. There's a couple dozen of them that are left. And figures like Quetzalcoatl are depicted on there with dark skin, not with white skin, as a Spanish colonial source describes them. And so we can fact check that and show how these Spanish colonial sources are actually biased. And we can actually understand the milieu within which they were understood. Cortez, in his letters, liked to claim he was being treated as a god. And the idea was disseminated that he was the second coming of this Quetzalcoatl, this white-skinned figure. And so, this is very much clearly a myth propagated by the Spanish, and they even used the myth of Atlantis and the Greek myth of the Hesperides to say, we have claim on this land. It's our ancestors that were here first, and it's been misused for hundreds of years, the same exact trope of a lost civilization. And so, for example, the Trail of Tears, we all learn about that in the US, right? Where Andrew Jackson's government dispossessed tens of thousands of indigenous people from their land. Written into the law was this idea that there was an earlier civilization there that was responsible for those mounds, those monumental mounds that were constructed, and saying that it was not the indigenous people that were responsible, so therefore they have no claim to this land, so we can kick them off. And so this trope, this pervasive trope that the indigenous people were not responsible for their own heritage, has been used for real harm in the past as well.